Hello, welcome to Philozenge. Today I'd like to touch on Hobbes and a little Rousseau. Two things about Hobbes. First, I'd like to talk about how he thought that humans were basically, in their essence, selfish. And if you let them go, if you didn't have governments which kept people in line, then we would be all killing and murdering each other and getting as much as we could to survive. And we'll compare that a little bit with Rousseau's idea of the noble savage, which was much more an idea that we all kind of lived in peace together before society, and that if left on our own, if we didn't have society, if there weren't so many damn people, then we'd all kind of get along pretty well, and we'd all respect each other's liberty. The second part about Hobbes that I'd like to touch on, however, is his idea of his materialistic idea that the human body is a machine. All right, let's start with Hobbes versus Rousseau, and I think to kick this discussion off, we can start with a thought experiment really, to figure out if we agree more with Hobbes' idea that human beings are basically selfish, or we agree more with Rousseau's idea that if we were left on our own, we'd all kind of get along pretty well. And I think we can put this into perspective with the thought experiment of throwing, wrecking a plane full of very different people from very different backgrounds, wrecking a plane on a deserted island, or wrecking a boat, or whatever have you, right? And so I think if you look at it from a Hobbes perspective, then we're looking at survivor, right? We're looking at a kind of dog-eat-dog, where teams are made to perhaps allow individuals to survive, but teams aren't made in any sense of real loyalty, okay? So a real dog-eat-dog world, and at the end of it, there'll only be a few people standing on this island. Classically, Hobbes is always brought up when people read Lord of the Flies. So if you've read Lord of the Flies, that's the idea. You get a bunch of young teenage boys and put them on an island together, and what's going to happen? Are they all going to get together and build a great society, or as the book suggests, are they all going to start killing each other and start gangs and weird religions and that sort of thing, right? So we got Hobbes' idea of survivor, or kind of a dog-eat-dog island where people like get into different gangs and gang up on each other, right? Versus, say, Gilligan's Island. That's kind of what Rousseau thought how things would turn out on this island, right? You get a bunch of people from diverse backgrounds, economic backgrounds, different social classes, right? You put them on an island, and you'll see that they'll cooperate together. They'll start to build a society. They'll start to build ideas of justice, right? This is kind of what we have with Gilligan's Island. So I guess I'd pose the question then back to you. What do you think human nature is? Is it survivor, or is it Gilligan's Island? And notice this is where Hobbes gets his idea of government. For Hobbes, what you need the government to do is stop people from killing each other, force people, in a sense, to be good. What Hobbes is suggesting is a kind of paternalism. And what's interesting in the book is that this Hobbes is related to a kind of classical conservatism. All right. Now, what we might want to do is reflect on whether this classical conservatism relates to modern conservatism, right? Because I think with both parties, if we talk Democrats and Republicans, but also with conservatives versus liberals, there is this kind of push against paternalism. While on the other side of the coin, both parties tend to push for a kind of paternalism that Hobbes is talking about. So, for instance, I think from the right we have the Patriot Act. We have a kind of it's okay to take away a few of people's freedoms or a few of people's sovereignty, as Hobbes would have it, for the security of the country. And definitely Hobbes would have agreed with that, right? Now, you'd see the left fighting against that, saying, no, this is taking too much away. It's being for our protection. We're losing our liberties, right? By the same token, you see the left talking about the old gun control concept, right? So while the right says, no, the government needs to stay away. We can take care of ourselves. People kill people, not guns. The left is saying, no, the government needs to step in and kind of control what kind of guns are sold out there and who owns a gun, because people can't handle it. Okay? So in each kind of camp, we have advocates of a kind of paternalism, depending on whatever the topic might be, as well as people fighting that kind of paternalism. right? The NRA doesn't want people to touch our guns, have the government touch our guns, and then you've got a whole movement now, we might call it from the left, not really, right, that's saying, you know, let people smoke marijuana or let people do anything they want in their own homes, right, as long as they're not hurting other people. In other words, the whole broader question that kind of Hobbes brings up is how much should a government control its subjects for the good of its subjects? Another thing that springs to mind is the government is now thinking about things like whether there should be restrictions or regulations on fast food, right? Again, here's the government stepping in to do things which are for the good of the people or for the good of individuals, really. And the question that Hobbes brings up is, should the government step in there? Cigarettes is another example. Hobbes would say definitely yes. The government needs to control these wild things called human beings because otherwise they'd end up killing each other. I'm interested in your standpoint. Now, the other part of Hobbes that I'd like to touch about is his idea of the human nature, specifically the human body, or, you know, human body, human mind, soul, everything that he saw as mechanical, as materialistic, that it was all kind of physical. And we're going to run into this again as we come closer to modernity, as we come closer to our own time in terms of theories of psychology. Whether, you know, we really have this thing called a mind or a soul, or whether it's just our synapses, you know, going along the usual paths of synapses. In other words, it's all physical, it's all chemical, as opposed to some kind of metaphysical idea of the soul. And I just wanted to touch on that because what we see with that idea of the human as a machine really brings us to modern medicine, right? So we have a lot of things to thank for that kind of general philosophy. Once we start thinking of the human being as a machine and kind of throw away the superstitions about the human body that were there perhaps in previous cultures and previous times, and we think that, oh, we can actually, you know, take this part and replace it with this part, or replace this chemical with this chemical, or cure this disease with this chemical. In other words, once you start to think of the human body as a kind of robot, then you can usher in modern medicine, where you can actually fix people, where you actually try and find the causes to diseases and then fix those diseases in the body. Now, I think everybody can probably see the advantages to seeing the human body as a machine. What I'd like you to think about for just a second is, what are the disadvantages to that? In what way do we think of our bodies too much like our cars, too much like a material property, that when it's broken we just have to go get it fixed, right? In what way does that idea of the human body as a machine take away from the specialness, or dare I say the sacredness of a human body? You know, what we're doing is kind of going into that Aristotelian space where Aristotle said, look, mind, body, they're all kind of mixed the same. Soul, body, it's all one kind of thing, right? So you can't have one without the other. Anyway, think about it. Body is machine. Are human beings basically good? Are human beings basically selfish and out for themselves? Talk to you soon.